what a amazing weekend it has been. We had Kevin on last night, absolutely on fire, talking about the Pope. I've just learned that Professor Hamamoto has been reading Kevin's works and watching his interviews over the years. And Professor has his own theories and formulations about the Pope that we're going to be getting to. We'll also be talking about some of the huge stories in the news, the Harvey Weinstein trial, Diddy trial, and we will get the professor's thoughts on the death of Virginia as well. So much to talk about. We've got an hour before Chris Todd comes in on the McCann case and Christian Bruckner. Already 100 waiting. This is phenomenal. So if you do have any questions for the professor, put them in the chat. And don't forget to go to the professor's links in the description box and subscribe to his channel. Now, everybody, every live stream we've done since we started covering Virginia, people are getting zapped off it. I've got it on my phone. I'm watching. I'm getting zapped off my phone. I got zapped off 6 times the other day. If you get zapped off this live stream, folks, either refresh your screen or just go to anything that's got my channel icon on it on YouTube. Click the channel icon, and it will bring you back. It's absolute claptrap that they're messing around with us like this, but it's just something that we've got to put up with. So thank you for coming back, my friend. Always a great pleasure to see you.
Mr. Atwood, it is my distinct pleasure to be with you here today and your above average audience, international audience.
Yeah, I mean, some of the questions they were asking Kevin were over my head. And some of these people are steeped in biblical and Vatican research. And you said that you've been doing your own research and formulating ideas. What have you come up with?
Yeah. Well, I've been following Kevin Annette's work for years, especially that which involves specifically the indigenous children of Canada, or the nation that he calls Kanata. And as it turns out, it involves a certain family that will go unnamed who have paid visits to one of their Commonwealth countries in order to abscond with the children resources there. And in connection with that, because it relates, I've been dealing with the priest abuse scandals of the Catholic Church in the U.S., including those that Cardinal or Bishop Vigano investigated himself. He came to the U.S. He was sent here specifically.
Can I drop
Yes.
a name in using your vernacular?
Yes.
Kolberg Saxa.
Kolberg Saxa Gotha. Yes. We'll use that code word, but
Saxa.
Your audience, Saxa. They it's the Teutonic Knights are very strong, but your audience knows who we're referring to, and most of your audience knows that Father Vigano has been excommunicated, and he's on the outside now. But you know what? He's writing about his excommunication process. So I'm looking at it as all of a piece. Some people might be wondering, okay, what does it have to do with America? I'm not Roman Catholic. I'm not even a believer. I'm in the New Age. I'm into Space Brothers or something like that. But the problem is that what this contingent is ignoring is that the Roman Catholic Church has played an integral role in shaping world history for the past several centuries, including in the Asian world, which is what Leo Zagami, my friend and colleague, will be talking about tomorrow on my show when he discusses his brand new book about the Society of Jesus, especially as it pertains to Japan and China. Right, we're talking about the 16th century. So, ladies and gentlemen, on a large, longitudinal, historical, civilizational stage, the Church of Rome has played an integral role, and it would be foolish of us to ignore it. So that's my operating assumption here.
Well, one of the things that Kevin said last night that flabbergasted me, when we looked at the percent of the religions in China, is that the Catholic and Protestants now are a third of the Buddhists and growing. And even though it's only what it was, 6-7%, it's still on such a huge population. It is absolutely massive. I just got kicked off the stream on my phone, so I imagine many other people have. So
Okay.
if you follow the instructions on the screen, you'll see my little icon. It says I'm live there. I just got kicked over to the T-Bone podcast. So you click back on the live, and it takes you back to the good professor and myself. That's how you get back, folks. But yeah, thanks for messing with the professor's stream, YouTube. We appreciate that. But yeah, what I was saying about the percentage, the growth of the Catholics in China was what I was talking about. I was surprised, and Kevin pointed out right now that it's this collaboration between the church and the Chinese. They're both trying to co-opt each other. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Well, the Chinese, if I can speak of them as a unified people, which they are not, they've had a really good success in assimilating outside hostile forces, right? They typically, the outside forces become sinicized or sinicized, Chineseified rather than the other way around. And that includes the Jews of the far western parts of China, the Muslims, known as Uyghurs generically, different Christian denominations. So they've had a very good track record of that. That being said, the churches of the West, Protestant denominations and the Roman Catholic Church, have never ceased in their efforts of proselytization, because it's a huge part of the world population with enormous resources that they would like to capture on the behalf of the earthly powers that they serve at bottom, right? We know that they have earthly powers that are very, very strong and deeply rooted. Now, that being said, the Protestant denominations, I would argue, were instrumental in precipitating the Boxer Rebellion, and leading up and even including the Chinese Revolution of the mid late 40s and post-war period, right? So the central government, the Communist Party of China, is really wary because they are students of history, millennially long history. They are very wary about any type of outside religious influences. And as Kevin Annette mentioned, and I read this in his other work, the government of China, central government, has control over who gets the top seats within their version of the Catholic Church over there. They get to pick their cardinals. So you have a fusion of church and state, which has always been very, very dangerous. That's one of the reasons why the United States of America, the Republic, one of the founding pillars was the separation of church and state, because historically, these brilliant men who crafted these rules understood let's put it lightly, the hijinks that these churches engage in when they merge with secular power.
What about the protection of these priests that violate children by the church and the scandals, including the present Pope? It just seems to me that they've got this attitude whereby these kids don't care. We're going to protect the violators at all costs, bring these high-priced fancy lawyers in, paid for by people's donations, some of it, no doubt. And that's never going to end. I mean, even the Leo that we've got now has been known to enable this behavior and protect these violators. I mean, don't you think that the church should completely clean house?
Well, again, I'll return to your guest of the previous three shows, Kevin Annette, and I've listened very carefully to the sort of the side comments he's making, which aren't really, they're actually central to his larger framework. But on his behalf, I hope I'm not misstating it, I will say that he makes a very important observation about how the Roman Catholic Church doesn't consider what that activity, which I'll just leave vague, they don't consider it a crime, they consider it a sin. So what is a sin is in their book is not a crime. So it's not punishable, and sins can be forgiven. You can gain absolution for it. And as we know historically, you can even buy your way out of sin. Perhaps that's going to be the fate of one Sean John Combs, who, by the way, is also being represented indirectly by the Jesuits in the form of Tina Garagos and her father, Mark Garagos, who I hope we can talk about in a moment. They
Okay,
were
we'll get to
both
that. But
trained at Loyola Law School, by the way.
we'll get to that. But just
Loyola
one
Law
more,
School. Yeah, go ahead.
just one more point. Then,
Yes.
you know, the priests are absolving themselves. They're washing away the sin.
Yes.
But the kid they've done that to, they can't wash that away. They're traumatized for life, and that's something that the church, if it continues to enable that behavior and have this attitude that you've just described, isn't it surely going to be their downfall?
I can't predict downfall or what. I can predict, however, what the church will do in order to mitigate public outrage on the behalf of these victimized children and adults, young adults typically, but not tiny, tiny children. They're going to bring in, because, the Roman Catholic Church are very, very steeped into hard sciences, from celestial observation to bioscience, right? They are, meaning the Roman Catholic Church, are going to bring in this new literature on neuroscience, and they're going to say, well, out of our beneficent and our way of doing penance on behalf of these children, we're going to enroll them into these mass neuroscience-based treatment programs to eliminate any signs of trauma. And there's literature, growing literature coming out of the academy, which is my world, which is heavily funded, that is being positioned. Now we're looking ahead of time here. That's why what I'm telling you here is probably not going to make a lot of sense at this point, but it will. But the church is positioning itself to come out as a savior of the children through so-called neuroscience, which, as you can tell by my quotation, my finger quotation marks, is a bogus pseudoscience. But that's where all the money's going. That's why Obama called this the decade of the brain science. And this is what J.E., the person who disappeared off the face of the earth, we know who he is. That's why he was so interested in that line of research at the Santa Fe Institute and other institutions, research institutions. Neuroscience. Beware, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, good point, Anna. They disassociate the victims and don't heal them. That is so true.
Right, and you're going to feed them with pharmaceuticals too. Or chips, maybe it could be Neuralink technologies.
Which the Vatican has huge investments in. So it just makes money from every angle.
Make it going up, make the money going up, make the money going down. It's the SOJ modus operandus. They like to use Latin, so I'll drop some Latin phrases in there myself.
Looks like Professor Hamamoto's hovering around 55,000 subscribers, folks. And I'm going to put his link to his channel in the live chat. Let's see what he's talking about. True crime as pop literary exploration of state criminality, dark tourism industry, fear of a fourth right, anxiety and envy. So if you want to watch all that good stuff, here's the link in the live chat. Please subscribe. Let's get him up to 100,000 this year. That would be nice. Then he'll get a plaque from YouTube if he's on the good boy list, which I'm not.
Thank you. I'll be glad to accept the award on your behalf.
Yeah, I'm not. I've never had one. So you were segueing over. You were segueing away from sax over to Diddy. What do you make of the jury selection and shenanigans so far?
Well, remember we were talking about the last time about jury selection? I think the larger media has picked up on how crucial it is to the outcome of this trial. It's all about the jury selection. Now, Mark Garagos has a podcast with another personality, media personality by the name of Harvey Levin. It's called Two Angry Jurors, I believe, right, based on this Broadway play and movie about 12 angry men. All the jury selection people, I'm talking about the defense team, has to do is come up with not two angry men, but two passive-aggressive, middle-aged Black women to completely gum up the works of the prosecution, which, by the way, is partly in cahoots with the defense. Can people wrap their mind around that the justice system does not work in a binary fashion? Defense versus prosecution, good versus evil. At this level, they're playing in the gray zone. We were just talking about the SOJ. They work the gray zone. They work the margins. They work the edges. So guess who's heading the prosecution team? Southern District of New York. It's Maureen Comey. Does that ring a bell? Comey, as in James Comey, former head of the FBI before President Donald Trump fired his butt. He was also once the head of the Southern District of New York for a year himself. So his roots go really deep into SDNY and through his daughter. There he is, the gentle giant, James Comey. His daughter's running the show. So anyway, the point I almost forgot to complete is that what's going on here is a trial, yes, but underlying the trial is what they called in the post-war Cold War period, 1950s, all the great policy intellectuals that were talking about war between the Soviet Union and the United States. They crafted something out of the think tanks called strategies of containment, because they wanted a war. They wanted the Cold War. They wanted the tension between East and West, just like the justice system needs the tension between prosecution and defense in order to completely legitimize and extend a corrupt system. All right, and as you know, very well know, and I think you just made sort of an aside, but I think it's an important point. In America, the American justice system, which you have an intimate experience with, it's the best system that money can buy. Right? And P. Diddy's people have tons of money. It's almost, I mean, they're printing the money, so they've got lots of it. But the point is that they want to make sure that it's contained, that that's where the strategy of containment is concerned, in just to the certain narrow band of characters. And that would include Sean Combs, and they'll bring in some peripheral people like Al B. Shaw and the memory of Kim Porter, and they'll bring in Cassandra, right? All these people here. But it's part of this, the theatrics by which the two wrestlers are on the same team. They're on the same payroll, right? As bad as that, and I'm trying to be real here. I'm not talking about law school, L1, the first year of law school. I'm talking about the people who go to Loyola Law School, trained by the Jesuit, win at any cost mentality, versus the Yale people, the Harvard. Comey comes from Harvard. Garagos Jr., Teeny, comes from Loyola. Her father's also from, she's a second generation Loyola Law School graduate. And those guys in America, they're known as street fighters. They're known as knife fighters. They can shred any white shoe lawyer from Yale, Harvard, Columbia, you name it, because they get down and dirty in the gutter. And they will win at all costs. And the way they're going to win, according to Professor Hamamoto's patented, trademarked, copyrighted cultural forensics methodology, is they have to get two angry Black women on the jury, and they gonna win. they gonna walk. P. Diddy gonna walk. And I know this from history because this is why cultural forensic historical panorama is so important, because Gara goes back to the O.J. Simpson trial, which I followed back in 1994. It was decided in October 1995, but Mark Garagos was at the table during all of it. Mark, again, that's how far he goes back, but that's a generation ago. Most of the people have forgotten about this. It's really key because it's part of our cultural, historical, and juridical memory that is part of the subtext of the Sean Combs trial going on now. So we have to foreground it. We being whoever side you want to pick, right? The prosecution or the defense, both of them are missing out on it. They're looking at strictly from a juridical, legal perspective. But in the age of cell phones, and it was only getting underway when OJ was under trial here, all this information is known to almost everybody out there. They're not going to get a pristine, uninformed jury. They're going to get someone who's been marinating in the whole P. Diddy story from the jump. That's Mark Garagos. He's Armenian, by the way. And I mentioned this because ethnicity, that's Orenthal James Simpson, who passed away not long ago. He was an American football hero in college, USC, University of Southern California, Los Angeles. And then he became an NFL, National Football League star and a media personality, and people know the rest. And by the way, I should say that this around the time where the trial was being decided, around October, prior to October, I was just starting over at University of California at Davis. So I was at a mixer of all the new faculty and welcome back for a new academic year. And I was a little bit too vocal about meeting people, and I told a lot of influential administrator type people who are always observing you, and they're watching you like Jesuits, man. They're always scrutinizing you, even at the dinner table, even when you're sipping a cup of coffee, they're keeping a book on you. But I happened to mention, I said, O.J. Simpson's going to skate. And they go, what? Because back then, everybody thought it was a slam dunk. O.J. Simpson's going down. But I said, no. And I said this at a faculty gathering, casual, I thought. And then I started walking around. I started hearing the buzz and said, hey, that guy Hamamoto, the new guy here, said, they were already stigmatizing me. And guess what happened? O.J. Simpson walked. He walked. Because as I told you before, I knew one of the women who was working with the Joellen Demetrius, who was the trial consultant for the O.J. Simpson trial. I said, with this type of behavioral science and profiling on their side, Mark Garagos, Johnny Cochran, Robert Kardashian, who's an attorney. He's another Armenian American, by the way. The Armenian connection, we're talking about ethnic connection. This is the big 800-pound gorilla in the room, by the way, race. There's a whole racial subtext here that's not being spoken about, right? But they had all these resources mobilized. That was the genius of Mark Garagos. And you notice that he started showing up at the table with his daughter as an informal advisor. And the judge said, no. Let's see, Garagos is not in this picture. You've got Robert Shapiro on the right, Johnny Cochran, just to the left of O.J. Simpson. I don't know who the little guy is in the middle, and some other ones. But Garagos is part of this, I believe. And this might have been right before Johnny Cochran or right after Johnny Cochran, he came up with his own hip-hop You Can't Stop rhyme, right? Johnny Cochran is the hip-hop king of the legal profession, and this is something that the defense might want to think about doing. He said, if a glove does not fit, you must acquit. And sure enough, through a process of what we call, write this down, people who are watching, through a process of what is called jury nullification. Jury nullification. Through the process of jury nullification, Orenthal James Simpson walked free. So this is the goal of the defense team, I believe, jury nullification. You don't have to win, you don't have to draw, you don't have to lose. You can nullify. Right? It's not a matter of, stop thinking about binaries, justice, defense, win, lose, good, evil. Jury nullification is the ticket. Yeah, that's the dream team right there.
That's Travolta in the movie.
Was there a movie made out of this?
I think so, because that's Travolta, isn't it?
Where on the
OJ movie, isn't it? Wasn't it the OJ movie?
No, these are the real characters.
Oh, that's not John Travolta.
Oh, you know what? That's F. Lee Bailey on the far left. That's F. Lee Bailey.
What about
who by that time was just a useless sot. He was drunk out of his mind most of the time. But you see, the point is that he had a resonance, he had aura, he had vibes, he had riz, as the kids say nowadays. He had the riz, so they put him on the bench so that the juries and the judge, Lance Ito, who I've been in contact with, by the way, I wrote him a letter afterward. I said, "Brother Lance Ito, you got screwed." And he wrote me back too. It's a letter I always treasure. Yeah, that's the great American attorney F. Lee Bailey. He's been at the center of any number of celebrity trials. Same with Mark Garagos. In fact, I think right now he's involved with the Lyle and Eric Menendez retrial. And it was the Eric and Lyle Menendez trial where P. Diddy's suit, his outfit, was crafted. It's the sincerity sweater that Eric and Lyle Menendez were told to wear by Leslie Abramson. She's another one of those attack dogs you do not want to be in a trial situation with her because she's a knife fighter. But she made him wear the sweaters and the shirt with a collar. Right? Make them look as wholesome and collegiate as possible. This is what Diddy's going to be wearing, or has been wearing already.
Yeah, so Travolta was in The People vs. OJ. He played Robert Shapiro. Let's get the Menendez.
Wow, okay. Yeah. There's, I don't know who's who, but they're the Menendez brothers.
Yeah, so that is Lyle on the left and Eric on the right.
Mm-hmm. Another sensational LA type crime.
And they're about to get released, aren't they?
They're working on it. I don't know if it's going to work, but that brings up the point is that you have to use the clock. It's like the game of American basketball, right? It may say 5 minutes left, but you can run the clock by timeouts, fouling, all kinds of diversion. You can extend the game, another 20 minutes. And in doing so, you can rally your own defense, mount a new offense, get your head together. That's our friend Harvey Weinstein. He's also going to probably be sprung, I'm guessing. And that's in keeping with this idea that I'm articulating now. You got to run clock. The longer you can run the clock, the better chance you have on the behalf of your client, whether it's Harvey Weinstein or Sean John Combs or Lyle and Eric Menendez. You run clock because there's a continuum between tragedy and comedy, right? Everything, no matter how tragic it is, given the passage of time, you run clock and it eventually becomes comedy. So the longer that this goes on with Sean John Combs, the more the needle pushes towards parody and then comedy, and it's going to be a laughing stock. And the jury, the judge, everybody involved say, well, this is not as serious as we thought it was initially. The needle has moved through the passage of time into comedy. I mean, I gave a talk recently, on my show. Okay, I mean, what could be more heinous than life in a Nazi concentration camp, right? 1945, people walked and said, man, this is horrific. Less than 2 decades later, there was a television sitcom on CBS television called Hogan's Heroes, a situation which was set in a Nazi concentration camp. And this is primetime television in America, right? So, again, run clock, get the needle to move from tragedy, whatever all the negative stories are about Sean John Combs, P Diddy, P Love, all of that, right? The dragon of Cassie Ventura, all of that, all the supposed parties, which the defense is going to pick apart. And so, well, how do you know? How do you know this is a freak off? Didn't you go there voluntarily? Blah, blah, blah. But you got to move that needle from tragedy to comedy. So all you got to do is get your people. You got to get Mark Garagos, go out to dinner with Jimmy Kimmel's. He's a talk show, chat show host. Take the writers out. They're all in L.A. Take the writers out to a big dinner at the local watering hole. Buy them dinner and say, hey, can you put a skit together in the monologue and let Jimmy Kimmel make a big joke about the trial, about P. Diddy? You guys are brilliant. You're genius. And then start getting your street team together and creating memes and putting them on TikTok and creating little videos. And then the needle is moving from tragedy to comedy. And by the time the trial is decided, you got one free Sean John Combs. You like it? Now, that's not what I want to see. I'm just trying to be real here. Okay? I'm just putting my mind in the head of a Loyola trained attorney who has centuries of figuring out ways how to parse the truth, how to tell people that up and is down and black is white, and that sex abuse is love. That's who I'm trying to. Yeah.
Wouldn't a victory for Diddy to have some kind of short sentence to offset his back time? He has to plead guilty to something to keep the prosecutors happy, and then he doesn't have to serve much more prison time, as opposed to just complete freedom, getting found innocent on all charges. Don't you think there's going to have to be some kind of compromise, or do you think because he's gone to trial there is no compromise?
There's going to be some token time because the prosecution, I believe, has a very weak case. Most of it's built on hearsay. And all the defense has to do is say, hey, listen, what about Daddy? What about James Comey? They don't have to say that. They can hire their street team to put that up on TikTok or to put it into monologues for comedians or send them out to the Laugh Factory and do monologues and making the big joke. Right? So there's going to have to be, in order for, it's going to be a face-saving maneuver, but there'll be a wrist slap. But Sean John Combs is not going to go to prison in the long term. Because at the same time, the people who are behind Sean John Combs are looking beyond the event horizon. They're already I'm thinking, this is what I would do. If Professor Hamamoto, Cultural Forensics, was a trial consultant, and by the way, it's all about rebranding. It's about branding. As a cliche as that sounds, it's about branding. And that's the whole history of Sean John Combs. It's about branding and rebranding, right? All his goods made in China, right? All his gear, which I've never seen anybody wear. I see all the stuff used at the closeout stores, right? Because I don't think
What about his courtroom appearance? Is that a form of branding? The white hair and
absolutely, comes right out of the Leslie Eberson, Lyle, and Eric Menendez Sincerity sweater outfit. Right? Because people, you like that? Huh? Sean, I'm in the wrong line of work. Why did I go into the education field and live like I I've had the 3 vows, poverty, chastity, and obedience. I'm like a Jesuit myself, especially I could have been a trial consultant, but it's not too late. You know where to pick. You know where to hit me if you need some help for your people. Hit up Professor Hamamoto's Cultural Forensics, and we'll talk about my fee schedule. But anyway,
you can be anything you want on my channel, on your channel.
Yeah, I know. And you know what? Sean John Combs proved to anybody that you can be, if you say you are this, that, or the other, people will buy into it. Because, and this is one of the points I wanted to make, we are dealing with the reptilian brain. You want to get the jury, because the public's already there. You want them not to think, you want to get them to react. So all you need is not 2 angry men, or 12 angry jurors. You need 2 passive-aggressive, middle-aged, divorced Black women in order to be on that jury, and he's going to walk. Because this is not denigrating them on a racial bad. This is a human deal. The reptile brain is a universal, and there's tons of research on it. I'm not just talking through my you-know-what. I'm talking heavy behavioral, social science. People want to dumb down. It's not really dumb down. It's because people, your audience are readers, so they want references. Check this book out. It's a multi-mega.
Yeah.
You have this one?
Read it. I've read that.
There you go. Yeah. It just tells you the everyday influence that we're bombarded with. But you could use these principles in your own everyday life. Sean John Combs knew this from the street. Plus, his handlers were instructing him all the way down the line. Clive Davis, all the confidence men that he ran with. Plus, it's transgenerational through his father, his milieu of gangsters. These are hustlers. The hustlers is all about influence. Oh, by the way,
so Corinne, go on.
This is another reference. I found it. I was cleaning out my storage unit. It's about 2010, 2011 published, called The Big Payback. It's the history. There's tons of references to Sean John Combs, P. Diddy in this book, if you want a general history. But this is the social psychology that the defense team, Teeny Garagos, has to overcome. She has to overcome the public sentiment of the big payback. Because most of the public now is thinking that, hey, P. Diddy had a champagne lifestyle. He got to go to all the mansion parties that only he could dream about. So he's getting his comeuppance. He's getting the big payback. So they have to move that needle from the big payback to Sean John Combs, the repentant. Because Americans love stories of repentance and salvation. We want redemption. We want the Shawshank redemption. So his people should already be setting up the foundations for the Sean John Combs Home for Abused Kitty Cats, right? Or the research center at Yale University for traumatic child experiences, something like that. Right, we'll come up with some. Just hit me up, and your consultant
Corinne's
will
asking.
Yes.
Corinne's asking about access to her collar in prison, or has he let himself look like an old man? So, Corinne, I remember one day I was going to court with Wild Man and Wild Woman, and the Wild Woman showed up with her hair every color of the rainbow, and I later found out how she did that in the county jail, and they used Kool-Aid powder to create these colors in the hair.
Yeah, I had a friend whose teenage daughter dyed her dog pink using Jell-O mix.
Wow.
Yeah, and I walked around with that dog pink, and I felt so self-conscious walking that dog on because, I think it would scare the parents.
Yeah.
By the way, the gray hair stuff, I included a graphic here. It's a classic picture from a set of stories, 19th century, by a guy named Joel Chandler Harris. And this character is known as Uncle Remus. Can you put that up there? Or is it considered racist? Uncle Remus.
If in doubt, leave it out. Let's.
Okay, but this is the history. This culture. This is what's in our epigenetics. This is in the reptilian brain. But Uncle
Pam wants
Remus,
to know. Oh,
Uncle
sorry, keep
Remus
going.
is an older, respectable black man with gray hair. So Sean John Combs is playing it perfectly. He's letting the gray come out. Plus, he's wearing the sincerity sweater. He's dropped the the ear studs and all that. All the gangster wear, that's out the window. He's got to be Uncle Remus. He's got to be like Morgan Freeman. All right. Now I'm just telling you objectively. I'm talking about winning. I'm not talking about racism or hurting someone's feelings or being butthurt. I'm talking about University of Loyola Law School SOJ tactics to win. Play the Uncle Remus card. And if you got two passive aggressive black women on the jury, they're going to know what they're playing. It's a semiotics. It's branding. By the way, speaking of brand, I should mention, yeah, that movie, by the way, has been banned. If you have a copy, if you have a collector's item, that was a Disney movie called Song of the South. And it was banned because black people said, we do not like to be portrayed as Uncle Remus. But you know what? It's backfiring on you because now you need Uncle Remus to spring Puff Daddy. So you better play your Uncle Remus card because it's about winning. Okay, speaking of branding, okay, Teeny Garagos, the lead, well, I don't know if she's the lead attorney, but she's one of the principal attorneys for the defense team. She is married to an expert in, guess what? Product branding. That's his thing. So that's her hidden weapon. She knows all about branding. So you can bet your bottom dollar that they're in the process of rebranding Sean John Combs as we speak. His name is Krishna Swami. That's her husband, her hubby. He's big in her. He's trying to, right? So he's in that world. And the perception on the defense team is to rebrand P. Diddy from this predator, quote unquote, to someone who's a philanthropist. Wow, that's so obvious. He's got to give some money away. He's going to come out better for this, right? He's going to go through this trial, and he's going to find Jesus. By the way, isn't he Roman Catholic too? Check me on this, people, but I think Sean John Combs is raised as a Roman Catholic. That's another hidden card. That's a wild card that could be played here. Because remember, there's a distinction between sin and crime.
Because we're running out of time, Professor, could we get your thoughts on the death of Virginia?
Well, I do believe that her death, and I'm not going to speculate as to whether it was by her own hand or from external forces. I have my own ideas privately. Whatever the case is, that she made a very important contribution at great sacrifice to bringing out this whole world that most of us are oblivious to. We're just living our everyday lives, and all of a sudden we find out that there are some dark corners of our political world that were illuminated by one Virginia Roberts or Virginia GIUFFRE. So we owe her a huge debt of gratitude for her sacrifice in that area. And hopefully that'll embolden others to come forth with their stories. And hopefully it won't degenerate to some sort of litigation fest led by people such as, well, maybe I shouldn't mention his name or he's going to sue me. It doesn't matter. I don't have any money. Tony Busby, right? Isn't that his career? That's his gig. So I'd like to leave that on that level of appreciation and honor her memory through her sacrifice.
Oh, well said. We've got a few questions have come in. So let me start to put these questions to you. So in the Diddy trial, does it only take one to declare a mistrial? That's the first question.
I believe so. That's why I'm saying you need two passive-aggressive black women on the trial, because one of them will talk to the other. If it's only one, then they're by themselves. But if there's two, they can mutually reinforce, and out of the two, only one needs to jury nullify.
Anna wants to know, is Diddy an agency construct after all?
Well, he's a self-construct. He's the master of branding with all his little schemes and scams and talents, right? Musicians and whatnot. But beyond him, yeah, we know there's Clive Davis, and there are people above Clive Davis. I did a talk on this months ago when the story was first breaking. I always thought that Diddy was more of a manifestation.
Did the grand jury say anything about the AR-15 with the removed serial rifles, two each on his property found during the search warrant? Well, he wasn't he was charged with that, wasn't he?
That I don't know. I mean, wouldn't surprise me, but I don't know if that would be admitted into the evidence. That's up to the defense to figure out.
Do we think if they play the video of Cassie in the courtroom, that will have a big sway on the trial outcome? I still struggle to get through that video. It changed my perspective on him too.
They're going to play that multiple times, and if that's the best that the prosecution has, right, to affect the reptilian brain, then they're going to lose. Because you can pick apart any video. Think the JFK assassination. How many times has the average person seen the sequence led up to the assassination? Right, and it's called, by the way, it's in the literature, and this is what the Garagos team should bring out. Teeny Garagos, right? I'm your Ronin for hire. I'm the masterless samurai. I'm for hire here. So I'm going to lay out something for you that's very important. It's called the Rashomon effect. Rashomon. It's a classic Japanese film, award-winning, by Kurosawa Akira, which tells the same story 3 or 4 times from different perspectives. It's the same objective crime, but it's all different depending. It's retold 4 or 5. George Lucas, all the great Martin Scorsese, all the directors we know and love worship that film. It's a classic. But what it is talks about the flawed nature of human perception and epistemology of knowledge. So if they can introduce, the defense team introduce the Rashomon effect, and there's lots of literature, and that's something that the defense should bring out. They should bring in the experts, right? The PhDs and the MDs who have expertise in this area to testify about the Rashomon effect, and inject the little grain of the seed of doubt in the minds of the juror or the jury. And policemen know this. They take a report on an accident. They have 3 or 4 eyewitnesses, and 3 or 4 of them have different stories of the same automobile accident. That's called the Rashomon effect. Use it.
Memory is malleable, folks. So, Corinne, did you hear Garagos Jr. say on Daddy-O's podcast that there are no videos and no minors?
I did not see that. There is some question about the authenticity of the video. Whether it's even some even said it's AI. You can throw all kinds of stuff out there to prejudice the minds of the audience there, and that's what I would do. I would say the veracity of the video itself is questionable, and all you have to do is introduce a grain of doubt in the mind of one juror. It's just one.
Pearl wants to know, I'm confused by what an actual informant does. Are these people informants and left alone because they have blackmail info on the police, CIA, FBI?
Well, informants operate on several different levels. Some of them are college students that the cops will bust at marijuana drug parties so that they can use them and scare them into getting a larger picture of the master distribution sequence. And they're used cynically, quite cynically by the police. And that's something that the defense can attack. What are the motivation of policing itself? What is policing? What is detective work? What is informant? Can you trust an informant? Doubt, doubt, doubt. Introduce doubt at every step of the way.
And a lot of these informants are used by the police, and sometimes they get killed for being informants, and the police don't give a crap. It's a terrible system. So,
Yeah.
Pam, do you think that Diddy will take the fall, or will he give up the names of the others involved?
I think Sean John Combs is going to stand up. Yeah, he's not going to give anything up. Yeah, because he comes from, that's his heritage, coming from his father and his milieu. He's a stand up, and he won't need to anyway, because remember, the prosecution is on his side. The prosecution is more concerned with keeping James Comey free from indictment. Their strategy is containment. So if they can cut a deal with Sean John Combs' people, he won't have to give up any names, and they'll just let the public come forward with names. Not even necessary.
Interesting. Bailey, you don't honestly think Diddy will walk with all these lawsuits and have a normal life again?
Well, that's a different question. He can be hit with all these civil lawsuits, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a criminal trial right now. Right? O.J. Simpson walked, yes, but then he was tried again in the civil courts and he lost. But even then, he still did not make reparations to the victims of his crime. So the civil and the criminal are related, but they're different. Will he live a normal life again? Probably not. But you know what? If he plays it right, if he's really the true king, the master of branding, he'll live a better life. Not normal, a better life, because he will be Sean John Combs, right? His name was Saul, but now it's Paul, right? That's going to be the rap. Write that in your little rap book, ladies and gentlemen. He once was Saul, but now he Paul, right? It's conversion. We love it.
Has victim number 3 showed up yet?
Who would that be? I don't know. Like the number machine. I heard some of them are dropping out. Right, some of the witnesses are starting to drop. And by the way, witness. What is a witness? And can witnesses be gotten to? Yeah, the answer is yes. They could be paid off. They can be silenced through other means we don't need to go into. And same with the jury.
It says here that victim number 3 is set to back out, but they're bringing in a victim number 5. All right, so next question. What could Diddy or any of these particular assets possibly have been providing all these years in order to let him continue this foul behavior 30 years ago? Look at the Manson family, how long they were allowed to go and do things. As long as they are supplying the handlers the goods, they're allowed to do anything they want, pretty much. They get arrested, they get a pass.
Mm-hmm. They miraculously seem to escape the long arm of the law. And this is true, we know about the Manson family, but there are these quote-unquote so-called serial killers. Part of my argument in my recent talk, and I've held this belief for a long time, is that most of those serial killers there are state-supported. Right? People like Ted Bundy was always escaping from prison. He went from coast to coast. right? And that's one way of cleaning up witnesses or payback, revenge. So, oh, it was a serial killer. It was a one-off. But actually, they are state-supported Hashashins.
Same with all
And
these
that's what,
credible all of these credible terrorist plots. When you look into them, there's some idiot
sure.
who's mouthed off, and then the informants have snitched the idiot out, and then the feds have come in, sold him some bomb parts, made headline news, got the kudos, and told the public, "We've just saved all these lives."
And
It's
by
all
the way,
manipulated.
please increase our budget.
Yep.
And let's build more
Yep.
prisons.
Will Trump help Diddy if he goes to prison? I hear Ghislaine has asked him if she can spend the rest of her sentence. Ghislaine's trying to get a pardon, isn't she, from Trump?
It could
Excellent.
happen. We don't know. Yeah. It'll tell
Well,
us a lot, though, if she does manage to pull that off.
Well, that'd be a tragedy. Do you think Mariah Carey could be allegedly involved? It could be subpoenaed. I think J.Lo could be subpoenaed.
Yeah, I think that's what the questioner might be thinking of, J.Lo, because she was Sean John Combs. I don't know what he was calling himself back then. That was his main woman back then.
She was smuggling the guns in.
Yes.
Right, let me see. I'm trying to pick. We've got 2 minutes. Professor, are you an INFJ personality type? Do you know? Because you see patterns. In my opinion, yes.
I don't know what INF stands for, but I'm very good at that.
Have you done the Myers-Briggs test on yourself yet?
No, I try to stay away from standardized testing at all costs. It goes back to my childhood, filling out little squares with a number 2 pencil.
Yeah, you've been asked, have you got any thoughts on the Madeleine McCann case?
Oh man, that is so complex. That's another one I've been following fairly closely. I think the person that needs a person of interest, he's dead, unfortunately, but the person of interest to me is Lucian Freud.
Oh.
Yeah, who was living in the area and reached out to the McCanns and inviting them for dinner. Because as you know, he was a personality in Britain, right? In cooking, cuisine. And of course he was related to a grandfather, Sigmund Freud. So it's kind of perverse. It's kind of a Hannibal Lecter type of gesture, don't you think?
Definitely.
Yeah, moving into that. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
We're going to have to, I'm just checking if Chris Todd is in the other studio right now. But while I do so, Professor, thanks for coming on. And can you tell the viewers what they can look forward to on your channel in the coming days, please?
Well, most immediately and tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific, a daylight time, we have the one and only Leo Zagami, who's talking about Volume 12, Confessions of an Illuminati. And this is the capstone of his multi-volume series. I don't know what he's going to go into next, but I'm excited to learn about it tomorrow. I'll ask him. And this is where he synthesizes it and puts it all together. And quite conveniently, the Pope died. So we'll have a lot to talk about, ladies and gentlemen. And beyond that, I don't know. I look for patterns everywhere. So I'll be back in subsequent weeks talking about any number of fascinating examples of human behavior.
And there's tons of unanswered questions. So please go over to the professor's channel. Link is in the live chat right now. And you can hound him in his comments section with your unanswered questions in exchange for a subscription. So stay tuned, viewers. We're going over to Chris Todd on McCann. And this video should transfer you over. Huge thank you to the professor. And hope to see you soon, my friend. You take care. Cheerio.